Yeah, thank you. Thank you also for having me here at this conference. Really brilliant venue. I'm very excited being here and also listening to all the other talks that are going to come. I feel an urge to tell you that, what I want to tell you today, because of the experience I had with regards to repression. We had these campaigns in the past. I used to be in England for a while. We had these pressure campaigns there. There was Consort Beagles, and it smelled like a success. The Beagle breeders closed down. There was Hillgrove Cats. There were the Shamrock Monkey Farms, Regal Rabbits, all these closed down. And then a famous Shack campaign, also a pressure campaign in the wake of these campaigns. But then there was a draconian police reaction. We were almost unprepared for this kind of onslaught that came via these conspiracy and organizational criminal laws that caught us unaware, and similar to us in Austria. And the consequence of this for many people was to say, okay, we now stop being active for animal rights and go somewhere else. This is what I feel is happening in England. I might be wrong, others could correct me, but my feeling is there's a lot of things happening against global warming and street protesting, but animal rights has died down a lot. There is little campaigning activity there out of fear of repression. Others say repression is just what you have to face, just keep going, run with your head against the wall. If it hurts, so what? The animals hurt more, so just keep on doing this. And then there's the third category of reaction, which I feel is almost the most frequent reaction, and this is put on suit and tie, look like businessmen and behave like businessmen and do businessmen-like campaigning. And apart from that, this is so contrary to my character that whatever happens, I cannot do that. Animal rights by any means necessary, but not a business suit. I cannot do that. I feel that this is just sort of a misconception to say nonviolent direct action has died. And it's just there's no place for it in modern society. I want to argue there is a place for it. This is the background of these pressure campaigns then and of their ideological background. It was the idea to be grassroots, not to be nationally organized, not to have fundraising, not to be media alert, not to think about what the public thinks about you, fuck the public, but do what is necessary to change things. The problem, as I said, was strong repression, which almost made the movement disappear in some fractions. What was missed was that there is a tipping point for effectiveness and radicality. And this looks approximately like this, that curve. What I mean is that you can do mainstream actions, which is what the big organizations do who want to focus on fundraising. They do mainstream activity, which is little effective, but nobody finds problematic. And so they can accumulate a lot of wealth, but there's not much effect on society they're having. And you can increase this this radicality, and you, in my view, I want to argue for that, increase effectiveness until you come to this tipping point. And if you then are even more radical, then it drops to ineffectiveness. And this is what was overlooked. People just didn't care, fuck the public, fuck media, radical. By any means necessary, radical. Yeah, and the consequence is that whatever you do, you lose completely the protection of a state that is supposed to protect rights. We learned the hard way that rights aren't there, just God-given, and whatever happens, state, police, whoever will protect your rights. Your rights are gone if the public doesn't sympathize. If you're seen as a disturbance to the peace and a disturbance to the status quo, then you're just destroyed. And this tipping point is moving, you know. If there's little sympathy of the public for you, then the tipping point moves here, so you can be even less radical before the drop-off. But if you win the sympathy of the public, the tipping point moves further over to more radicality, and you can be even more radical. So what I conclude from this is that radicality is important to be effective, but sympathy of the public The public must understand what you're after, and your goals must be understood. They must be the public, normal, mainstream person. If you present them with the case, they must understand what you want. Then you can be very effective and radical. But that includes carefully choosing your target goals, because you can't just do whatever comes to your mind. Veganism or nothing just isn't persuasive for the public. So what I say, not mindless radicalism, but smart pragmatism. Smart sounds like suit and tie. I don't mean suit and tie. I mean smart in the sense of stay always below the tipping point, and at the same time try to push the tipping point to the right, towards more radicality. This means, on the one hand, being as radical as is possible, realizing where the drop-off comes, and being so realistic that the public can sympathize and understand. You might ask, okay, why not just do friendly vegan outreach? The public might understand, and especially if you're smiling and friendly, that might work. So at the end of the day, you might get everybody. So I want to introduce to you this curve that to me and long decades of experience explains why vegan outreach is very limited in its effectiveness. This is why I'm arguing radical actions are necessary. What does this curve tell us? There is, on the left is complete animal abuse, and ever more to the right is ever more respect towards animals. And on the very right, this axis on the very right is complete respect, veganism, equal rights in principle. And this curve basically shows the structure that society is putting onto this continuum of animal abuse to animal rights. And we humans are balls basically on this surface, and there is gravity pulling us down. And what these steepnesses on the curvatures tell us, that if you want to do at today's society animal torture, if you want to torture animals, if you want to do dog fighting, cockfighting, if you want to organize that, then you're having a hard time, because it's illegal. You have to look over your shoulders. The police already coming. Is this person a police spy or that? And you have to be aware that this is not socially adequate. If you keep telling everybody, by the way, I'm a dog fighter, then you will find that people will shun you. So it's hard to stay up there, and this is what the steepness tells us. The mainstream society tries to pull you down, and it's hard work to stay up there. You must be very motivated, and must be, for some reason, be very, very motivated to do animal abuse. If you let go and just go with the flow, you're falling down into this trough. This is the cozy place to be. This is where you don't need to spend energy. You're just there, like everybody else. You walk through the supermarket, grab the things that are in the height of your eyes that everybody else grabs. Factory farmed products, vivisected on shampoos, whatever. Just a cozy place. If you want to then move towards more respect towards animals, or go for organic meat or free-range products, then it's very steep up there again. And that is because it is problematic to do it in some ways. Imagine yourself being in a group of friendly folk who is going to a football match, and then you watch that, and then you go out, and then they go to this sausage stand and want to grab some fast food. And then you say, is it organic? And then all these people around you say, what? What's this guy talking about? Just be normal, eat like everybody else, don't fuss. Who do you think you are? Ooh, pressure on you. Oh, I want to be normal. And then you maybe grab the factory farmed product. And what that means is you've tried to move up here, and then they pulled you down the stream and pushed you back into this trough. So it's hard work to get up there. And that the steepness decreases here is meaning to say that it's from organic meat to vegetarianism is almost easier than from factory farmed, I don't care kind of attitude to organic meat. Because in both cases, organic meat and vegetarianism, you have to look ingredients and have to ask and be strange. Everybody looking at you and thinking, what's this person doing? And then even more so to veganism. So what we're doing when we're doing vegan outreach, we don't change the structure. We're just lifting the ball and trying to move them up there, which is fine, because then these people are up there swimming against the flow. But what happens if they lose motivation? What happens if their spouse is leaving them, or if they lose their job? And suddenly priorities shift. And suddenly they say, I need to find a job, I need to find a job. Bloody grab the cheapest food, poof, and you roll all the way down into the trough. The system forces you with some strength and permanent pressure to actually fall down into the trough. And the vegan outreach just lifts the bowl, but it doesn't change the system. And for changing the system, we need confrontation. We need political action. If you do vegan outreach, and I don't mean that group, I don't want to belittle activities of vegan outreach or anybody distributing vegan leaflets. It's a very good thing to do. We've done it often enough. I've also founded the Vegan Society Austria. We're doing this too. And it's important for many reasons. It's important to establish an infrastructure that you can cling on to when you have new goals for the society as a whole. And what it also does is it creates a little dent here. It helps people clinging on against the mainstream up there. That is because if you just persuade somebody with a leaflet, say, to be vegan, and then they're up there, and then they are just in an alien world because everybody looks at them weirdly and says, vegan, what are you doing? And if they don't know anybody, then the social pressure pushes them down. But if there's a vegan society they can contact, and there are other people like-minded, that helps them. Or if there is an animal rights radio, like I'm doing an animal rights radio show since June 1999 every week for an hour, and they switch on the radio and somebody talks about veganism. And then they go in this, university group, and there's somebody talking about veganism, and there's a vegan stall there, and there's a vegan trademark sign in the supermarket. That all helps them stay up there. So this dent we can make bigger and keep people up. But still, I think if the system doesn't change, eruption in their life might lift them out of that little trough and push them back down to the big trough. So it's a good thing and good work to keep people up there and to lift the bowls up there, but I think a system change is necessary. And that is because humans are essentially social and not rational animals. Humans tend to do what all the others are doing and not what is rational to do. They don't listen to principled theoretical arguments. They go with the flow. And you find that in your groups, I'm sure. There are people might attach to your group who aren't vegan. And how long does it take for a person to become vegan if they're immersed in a vegan group? It's just like nothing. 1 day, 1 minute. Immediately they're vegan. If it's odd not to be vegan, everybody's vegan like in no time. So people are social beings, and therefore we need system change too. There's also the foot in the door principle, apparently. That is sort of psychological research that says you must change systems incrementally. It's easier to get people to get another step if they have done a step already. Which means for me, just to try to change the system, this trough, 1 step all the way to the right is not feasible. That might be possible in a violent revolution, but that is not what we are about to do. So we need to move it step by step. Every about few years, push the trough a bit on. And there is another recognition that politicians are not ethically minded. I have decades of experience with debating them, and even the greenest of the green, in my experience, come in power, they are not ethically minded or very little. There is a lot of pressure from industry, and they will succumb to that pressure. So what we need is be a trouble, be a pain in their ass. Not persuade them, but be a pain in the ass. There is a politician, and there is your demand. And if they feel, just close the door and take your demand and throw it in the rubbish bin and you're never heard of again, they will immediately do that. The only moment when they listen to you is when they realize that if they close the door on you, they will have trouble. There will be trouble looming. So what you must do is step on their toes, and so hard that they can't ignore you. And that only works with pressure campaigns that actually cause pain. So that's what we need to do. We need to be more trouble than the animal industry, because I know that, I assure you, animal industry goes in and out in the offices of politicians. And every day they tell them, you lose our support, you lose our tax, you lose our employment that we afford or that we offer. We just leave to another country, all the economy goes down, everybody will be poor, and you will not be re-elected. Politicians want to be re-elected. And they are not re-elected if there's a fuss, and they are re-elected if you're friendly. So if there is a friendly vegan outreach person, that doesn't hurt a politician, because there's everything's peaceful and friendly and fine, and so they will be re-elected. There's no trouble in society, so why change the head of the society? And if there is trouble, if there is permanent demos and screaming and shouting, and if there is occupations and blockades, then they will not be re-elected, because people want to have peace. So you must be a pain in the ass. In a sense, this is what democracy is about. Democracy is a dynamical system. Every social decision has basically such a curve that I showed here. And this curve is the outcome of interest groups pulling resources or their demands in their direction, pulling the status quo in their direction. And this is a dynamical equilibrium of pullings. And for animals, nobody pulled, so which is why animals have lost out. And this is our job, basically like a union for animals to start being their political voice and pulling in our direction, joining in this permanent conflict in society to actually establish a system that is ever more friendly to animals. So cause trouble, deliberately escalate the trouble until there is a resolution, keep the door open for resolution. So in contrast to these grassroots campaigns at the beginning, I say you must look for the solution already. The solution must be reachable, must be realistic, and you must keep the door open. You don't attack the politicians by saying, you asshole, and you don't attack them with a baseball bat, but you attack them in a sense, in a passive sense, that you disrupt their activities, keep a friendly face, keep the serious argument, keep the public on your side and say, why don't you do what your majority wants? I will be back here and I will sit on your bloody desk until you listen to the majority. And this is a normal thing to say in a democracy. In a democracy, majority rules, and if they don't listen to the majority, then you have a very strong ethical argument for actually sitting on that desk. So this is basically where we have to come from. Yes, there is a basic inequality in this dynamical conflict in society. There is a basic inequality. There is the rich and the influential, and they have a large budget. They open the door into these offices in no time, and they actually keep how they treat animals a company secret. And so there is no fair confrontation in democracy. And for this unbalance of power, we draw from there the right to non-violent direct action that might actually break the law. And this is the argument that I'm bringing forward, and I'm saying that in public, and I'm saying that to judges, and I've written a book about this, Resistance Within Democracy, and I say this is firmly our baseline. I'm not hiding my face. We're doing this activity, and this is just. And it breaks the law, yes it does. Because the situation in society is decidedly undemocratically and leaning towards the powerful. And our answer is non-violent direct action and civil disobedience, like these other people have done, who are now seen as heroes of civil society. And we following in their wake. And this is hard for a judge to say, no, I think Martin Luther King should have been locked up. I mean, the first thing they say is, Martin Luther King had a good cause, you have a bad cause. But then you say, okay, we're not talking causes here, we're talking about methods. The methods is detached from the cause. There is a method within society to further your goals, and that must be completely independent of the ethics behind it or the goal. I'm not arguing ethically, I'm arguing within democracy. Within the democratic system, these aspects are legitimate. Legitimate is anything that furthers the public debate, and not legitimate is anything that hinders the public debate. And furthering the public debate might well be doing a civil disobedience action. For example, the large budget must be outweighed by us doing disruption actions, because the media is reporting about this like as if I have a lot of money and put it in advertisements. That must be balanced out. There's just one rich guy who has 50 million euro and plasters the streets with his opinion. But he's one person. In a democracy, one person, one vote. So I should be able to put my opinion forth in this equally, and which is why I am justified to do civil disobedience. undemocratic influence, occupying an office until they debate with you and until there is a resolution of the conflict, or investigations inside factory farms are democratically justified because they further the democratic process. Here are a few examples: the disruption of an animal fight, disruption of a fur fashion show that we did in Oslo, disruption of Minister for Animal Welfare giving a talk, or disruption of the agricultural minister who not wanted to ban these sow stalls. These are justified activities because they outbalance this budget that these other people have, that the political opposition has. Here, similarly, fly posting, justified in this sense. And occupations, blockades. This is, for example, a blockade of the agricultural ministry, 33 hours, we closed it down. This is an occupation of the office of the provincial governor in Salzburg, who didn't want to close down a pig factory that was totally illegal, and investigations. So essentially, the law is not what sort of stops our activity. It's being furthering or hindering the public debate. But there are still illegitimate illegal actions. This is some that hinder the public debate. This is threats of violence. If I say to my opponent, if you don't shut up, I push your, I bloody knock your head in with my baseball bat. This is something that hinders public debate. Use of violence, obviously, criminal damage to exert pressure. Criminal damage per se is not out of the question, because criminal damage might be used as a symbolic gesture if you follow guidelines according to what I propose civil disobedience means. An example of a criminal action that was civil disobedience was here me liberating 7 battery chickens in the old days, 2003, when they still existed. The value was put to €15. We had to break the door, but I sort of put another lock on it with a key, and these 7 hens I brought out to the vet care, and I was in there with a journalist. And actually, the state prosecutor phoned me and said, "Pay €15 and we forget about it." And I said, "I don't want to forget about it. I did that deliberately in order to have a trial because I want to challenge this system." And then I was found not guilty on appeal. The first instance I was found guilty, and then on appeal I was found not guilty. The judge said he acted in accordance with the public view and the public interest, although I admitted to having broken in and actually stolen goods. Characteristics of legitimate illegal direction. And I'm saying, if you do this and if you explain it to the public, then this keeps you on the right side of the tipping point. It is not necessarily so, because you might have an goal that is actually not understood by the public, and then they won't even accept this kind of activity. But they will accept it if it's a goal where the majority thinks that should actually happen, like ban of a sow stall. Who in their right mind thinks sow stalls are a good idea? So that should actually happen. But there is politicians, there is powerful animal industries who prevent it from happening. And then you can do this activity. 33 hours, we blockaded the agricultural ministry with tripods and with lock-ons, with lots of people, day and night. And the public came and brought us tea and coffee and vegan biscuits, and the media reporting was very positive, because the public understood. At that time we had increased mostly legal activity, but we had increased the awareness of the public, and they were increasingly saying, why don't they change that? And so in that situation, such a civil disobedience action is justified. So basically the campaign strategy I am proposing is firstly outreach, passive, friendly outreach, to make people aware of your topic, winning the minds of the majority. And we have done that in many, many topics where we haven't actually changed the system. So if you remember this curve, in many aspects, people actually would love to be further up there, but they're down in the trough because the system forces them. We saw that when we did an opinion poll, a professional opinion poll, to battery farming. We had 86% of the public saying battery farms, cages for laying hens should be banned, and we had 80% buying battery eggs. And the explanation is very simple, and it happens to all of us, I suppose. You are in favor of human rights, and you might still buy, if it's cheap, if it's easy, if you haven't thought about it, a t-shirt made from sweatshops. It's easily happening. You might be against cars because they drive over animals. The roads have been built through primeval forests, and the exhaust fumes destroy our climate, and you still drive a car. That's where the priorities come in. You understand, if the system was such that you wouldn't have to drive a car, you'd be happy and stop driving a car. Wouldn't we all be happy if there aren't sweatshops and every t-shirt we bought, the cheapest and easiest to get, is all human rights corresponding? We would be. So we need to change the system in the name of the majority, because they actually want to live more ethically towards animals, but the system prevents that, because animal industries have a different agenda. Okay, when we have a majority here, then we try to get all people behind it. It is not necessary that every group is participating, but every group should openly support this campaign. It's good if we have very different approaches. It's good if there are suit and tie people who speak with these politicians or in the media, but they still should support the same cause in the same direction as those that are on the street. We need a combined tactic of those that are causing fuss on the street and putting their heads on the line, and at the same time those that seriously present cases and present the arguments and are taken seriously by the public and the media. We have this combined effort that is so important, and that was missing in these pressure campaigns at the beginning. There was just no compromise, fuck everybody attitude with the mask, and fucked national organizations at the same time, because they're equally fucked. And the consequence is complete destruction. And there is these suit and tie people who say these rowdies should just be removed. And how effective can you be if you have just suit and tie and sitting in some office? Who should care what you're saying? So you need the combined tactic, and you need tolerance and understanding of each other. And then choose the realistic goal, and this is, if you want the art of good campaigning, the goal must be achievable within reasonable time. The goal must be workable. It must be proven to work, because nothing is easier than a politician telling you what you're demanding doesn't work. So you must have good proof that it does work. Otherwise, they have a very good reason to just close the door on you. And then you stick to it. There's no room for compromise. There's no room for debate. We've thought about this, and this is cages must go. And there is a cage that has a bit more room is not the solution. Cage, no, must go. And they must understand your resolve in this. Yeah, you know, I'm not fussing about. I'm going and coming back and biting your fucking toes, and I'm not leaving until you do that, what we demand, because the majority wants it. And we are democracy after all. So listen to the people, and you must pressure that on and not let go. And this is the key, in my view. Because if they can't lock you away because the public sympathizes with you, what should they do with this person constantly on their heels? Eventually, listen to him. Single out a political opponent. If you have 50 politicians you have to bite, that won't work, because there's always a lot of them not bitten, and they just won't care. So what you need to do is single it out on one person or one tiny group of people, and just focus your pressure on them, because pressure is what you need to get those changes, and the heat of the pressure you don't feel if it's dissolved with lots of topics and lots of groups. And if you say this party and that party as well, and this politician, and they're all fucked, then it doesn't work. It works only if you say there's this funny person who actually prevents democratic decisions, and I'm outside his office, and I'm going to every talk he does in the public, and I'm all the time reminding him, every time he turns up, I'm opening my banner and saying, have you thought about this after all? And are you going to change it or not? Find political allies outside animal rights. We found that it's very important to get also political parties on. If they see that you're actually having an effect, and the public listens to you, then they might join you and actually give you some information at the same time. Liaise with media. I know it's hard, but sometimes they're cool people, sometimes it's a bit prostitutional. But I mean, what I'm trying to do then, is get to know who is in principle sympathetic, and then invite them to dinner, go out, speak with them, give them internal information, make clear to them that you know that you are the serious person here. You have these arguments and you have this news, good news. And if you have them on your side, then you can debate with them how you get the news story into the paper or the magazine. So yes, it's very important to have these contacts. And then start your permanent activity with the resolve, with the motivation not to let go. And that must obviously see an end somewhere. If you want to start now and then 20 years later you're still chasing those politicians, there's no good idea. No politician lives for 20 years in a political frame. Anyway, but you need to have an end so that you can not exhaust. So this is also part of the realistic choice. The choice must be in a way that you can safely say within a year we have more or less achieved our result. I'm briefly giving you now a few examples of the fur farm campaign we did that ended in a fur farm ban in November 1998. It's funny because we occupied the office on the 10th of February and 7 days later they actually introduced the ban, and another 9 months later the last fur farm in Austria had closed. Similarly, we did a campaign against animal circuses, and we had this film we did, and we started to be there. We had a lot of violence from circus staff, and yes, it is troublesome to do that, but on the other side, this is good media. This is a good way of bringing that forth. This is our solicitor who was standing there to see sort of that everything's right, and then he was kicked in the face and had a broken nose. And we got a ban. 2002, the ban on wild animals in circuses agreed. 2005, the ban took effect. And I have a brief overview of our battery farm campaign that we started in July 2003. We went into 48 battery farms and showed the results. These were 40% of the battery farms that were in Austria, or 40% of laying hens. You see here the flags that were the farms we visited, and we did a press conference. Within 15 days, on these old days, we thought it's important to do that all at the same time. Nowadays, people take a bit more time for this. And for each flag, you can click on it and then see how the battery farm was there. And in that sense, we could leave this situation where politicians say to you, this is just the so-called black sheep. This is the one bad battery farm, the others are good. So you need to have an overview. You need the typical situation. I'm not wanting to look for the illegal, particularly bad one. I want to look for those that are typical. And then we let this be followed up by open liberations, so that the media also saw how it looked like in these farms. And in January 2004, we started a confrontational campaign by daily demonstrations outside the agricultural ministry, by demonstrations on the street here, with battery chickens, dead battery chickens on the street, and kept the pressure up. I show you a few examples here, disruptions of Conservative Party elections, because these were the ones who wanted to avoid that. This guy punched me in the face. You know, we had a rally. He was to be elected in a provincial election for the agricultural spokesperson for them. And I had an election rally against him, just 200 meters beside his rally. And I said, if you elect this person, you're electing battery farms. And he got so enraged that he stepped down, walked over to my little podium, stepped on mine, and in front of everybody, punched me in the face. I still have here the scar. He ripped my skin. And you know, I didn't say, fuck you, and punched him back. No, I wrote a press release. And the situation was that the headline of the election day was head of the prime candidate of Conservatives punched animal person in the face. Imagine now you are a masked person who just keeps hitting those people or breaking their windows. Then the headline would be, stupid radical idiot has been dealt with. Yeah? And that's the huge difference once you have no public pressure. And on the other side, they lose 50% of the votes, as they did. We also occupied offices. We occupied the headquarters of the Conservative Party for 13 hours. Inside Parliament, we dropped a banner and screamed against battery farming. We occupied a battery farm in the city of Salzburg and liberated 34 battery hens in open daylight, and neither the owner of the farm nor the police intervened. They saw us doing it, and I said, hey, we broke a window actually. We broke a window, went in, took it out, and then stayed there and said, call the police. And the police came and the police left. And then the owner came and said, keep them, and left. Okay, this is when the sympathy of the public is so high, then you can do these sort of things. This is effective, radical action on the left, on the safe side of the tipping point. We exposed the enriched farms inside Parliament, and we had conference talks with the politicians and whatever. And eventually on the 27th of May, we had this historic vote in Parliament that every single politician voted in favor of a ban that is solid, that is against enriched cages. The enriched cages were banned as well. And together with it, we got an animal solicitor scheme and animal protection in the Constitution, because the dam had broken. And just we pushed through and ran as far as we could before the stop. And this is the Prime Minister. He stood up, and he stood up and suddenly said, we always wanted a ban on battery farming. I mean, obviously, there's nobody who thanks you when you step on people's toes. They hate you. And actually, beside him was the agricultural minister, and he said, yeah, thanks to the animal people, we have now this battery farm ban, when we first in the world, and all whatever. And at the same time, he already prepared the Sonderkommission, the special commission of police to sort of bring us down. And we let it follow by a supermarket campaign to cage-free. And I briefly tell you about the hurdles to go through to shift the trough, because it's not enough to win the public. It's not enough to actually get the government to do a law. You also need to get the police to enforce the law. And you need to win an appeal in the Constitutional Court, because inevitably this is what's going to come. But at the end of the day, this is the sort of results you can have. We want a songbird trapping ban. We want a ban on experiments on apes, including gibbons, which is my favorite, because there's no ban on including gibbons. Okay, and caging rabbits for meat. If you look at the rabbit farm, how it looked like, and then the rabbit farm, how it looked after the ban of cages, you see an improvement, and you see that this is more expensive. Okay, this is the sort of results you can achieve with pressure campaigns. It isn't so that nobody eats rabbits anymore. This is the result. And I'm not a magician. I don't know what's going as a next step. How can you improve that with the pressure campaign? Is this the next generation of activists from here to even more, or no rabbits at all? I don't know. We'll see. But with pressure campaigns, you can't be more abolitionist than a fur farm ban. If there is an established way of using animals, then this is going to stay. But you can make it harder for them. And my hope is you can make it increasingly harder until there is liberation. What happened then was this attack by the police, but they bit their teeth on granite with us. They did lock me up. They did lock many of us up. But we went public. And we used the sympathy of the public that we had accumulated by then. And we did press conferences, 25. I went on hunger strike for 39 days, which almost killed me. We had 14 months trial, 25 press conferences, and we did swing it completely around. We got found not guilty, and not just that. As a consequence, the law was changed. We not just stopped them hurting us, but we slapped the law out of their hands. This section that actually was used against us is now being made unusable for that. It was changed so that it doesn't, in principle, not apply to political activity like we did. So you see, with this kind of pressure campaign, you can also change the weapons that are used against you. And this is not what is happening if you haven't got sympathy with the public. Yes, okay, I'm finished. Summary, look at that. Okay, briefly, goal, political change, but I've said that anyway. So I jump to the very last slide, which says we are going to have this action, which was happening in Madrid. Here I was invited to do this, and we want to do an even bigger one on the 5th of November with 500 people in the city of Vienna, in the city center. And if you want to register to come, here is the registration, and we want to have a world record for this kind of action. Thank you.